Hello everybody, and welcome to the short video on Vincent. Vincent is meant to be a wrapper around DevOps tools such as Ansible, Chef, Puppet and Salt to generate the configuration files and artifacts those tools need to be able to deploy and configure machines. It's architected in such a way that there will be plugins for the different engines. Currently we're working on the Ansible plugin because this project is under heavy development and is still sort of proof of concept stage. So we've architected to be able to have a different plugins, but I'm sure people will see that throughout the sort of code and the API, etc., there's some Ansible vestiges in there, which maybe as we introduce more, if it's successful and we introduce more engines, they'll become more generic terms and terminology that we'll use that are applicable across all of the different tools. So Vincent is written in JavaScript. It runs on Node. It's a client-server architecture. So we have a client that's written also in JavaScript, but the idea will be to move it to C because we don't want to have to install Node just to be able to connect to the server on the clients. But I think the best way to kind of show Vincent and what it does is to just get right into it. Yeah, we have two terminals at the bottom. These are the two virtual machines we've got that we're going to configure. We just got the IP addresses here. Where is it now? 192.168.122.187 and .122.192. So first we have to log into Vincent, and I'm just going to use our JavaScript client. So I log in. This is using Unix password authentication currently. So also we've kind of built the authentication part to be modular, so you can authenticate against LDAP, or you can authenticate against the user database or Unix password. So these users are users on the actual system that we're connecting to. Okay, so I've logged in, and the way we kind of interact with Vincent is via this Node.js REPL where we have exported our domain objects to. So everything's accessed via V just to kind of namespace it out from the rest of the stuff. And we use this concept of managers. So we have 4 managers. We have the group manager, the user manager, the host manager, and the application manager. So the idea is that users and groups are configured independently of the host, and then they are attached or applied to hosts. This way, for us, the idea was that you have people in your organization, you need to give them access to machines. When they leave, you just want to kind of mark them as absent in the user list, and finally delete them and have them marked as absent and deleted and removed from the machines which they previously had access to, or just put their accounts on hold if they would leave, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's the user and group management. So also you don't want to have inconsistencies across groups. Maybe somebody calls it ops on the one machine, operators on another, because they're all the different config files. So that's what the users and groups are for. Then we add them to hosts. That's where the host manager comes in, and that's where we spend most of our time is configuring and managing hosts. And then we also have the applications manager, and the idea here is that we have different modules for different applications, like configuring postfix or Postgres or Apache or Nginx, etc. So we can just go sort of like apache.add virtual host and have it organize and modify the configuration files appropriately for us. But let's sort of start with adding. We need to add 2 users here. So first of all, Vincent is the user. We're going to log in as these 2 Ubuntu machines at the bottom here, and we're going to have to be able to sudo to root to be able to run anything. And then we're also going to add Mark, the user I'm currently logged in as, because I want to configure these machines so that my public key is copied over to the 2 machines, so that I can then use public key authentication to log in as Vincent on the 2 machines. Okay, so first of all we go v user manager.add users. We can use autocomplete here because of the REPL. So let's add a user called Vincent. And I'm going to add another one called Mark, and we can kind of see this is just a representation of the object for us. Now what I can do now is also create some groups and do this via group manager.add group, and let's just call it DevOps. Okay, so we've got our group DevOps. Now we can do things like assign public keys. So for user Mark, because I'm a local user, I want to assign my public key. Currently I've got no public key. So as a logged in user, I have the session object where I can access various functionality for provided for the currently logged in user. Like I can get my public key. I can also get my public key path where it's stored on the server. So now I need to assign this public key to this user account that we just created. So I have to get a reference to it. So it will be user equals, and it's just normal JavaScript. I can go and, well, first of all, I get a reference. Get a reference to my user. I can user equals, and I can go v dot user manager dot get user, and I can get hold of user mark. Then I can go mark dot public key, and I can assign my public key for my session dot public key. Okay, now if I go for user, I can see that I have a public key assigned. Okay, so let's go ahead and start creating our host now. So we're going to go v.hostmanager.add host. Now we can add host for IP address or DNS entry or host name if we've got DNS set up. These ones currently don't, so we're just going to use the IP address. And I could either just assign it and then go and get the reference, or I could just get the reference at creation time, so I can get a reference to host. I can also assign the host OS family. Since this is Ubuntu, I'll assign it to Debian. And now I can start adding users to the host. I go host-h.add user, and I can add user Vincent. This will create what's called a user account. So I can also get the user account by referencing it by get user account and then say Vincent. And then user account you'll see as authorized keys. So I can add authorized user, and I can add user mark to the authorized keys, right? And what you can see now if I go user account, authorized key has been assigned. So that's one of the setups we've done now already for this machine. We've added user Vincent and we've assigned an authorized key. One of the things with Ubuntu and different flavors of Linux distributions is you might have to sudo. So you have to tell the DevOps tool that it needs to sudo to root, right? And for each task, because maybe it might be some tasks you don't need to sudo, or if you've got a really complicated security setup, you've got different types of users that can do different things, and they're limited, limited privileges of what they can actually do and commands they can run. So to do this, we're going to get a reference to our user account, and we have this concept called become, which comes from Ansible. So that means do you need to su, and we say true. Okay, so now this user, to perform this task of creating this user and adding the public key, we're going to have to sudo to do that. Okay, now this can get tedious. All of the tasks we add, you might have to do this too. Tell it to be able to enable sudo, which can become a bit repetitive. So we'll find a way. I'll show you a way how we can prevent it from becoming repetitive. So other things we can do, I can go add a group, add a host group, right? And we've got our group defined, which we called ops, if I recall correctly. And if it's not right, then I'll get told, it's not a valid group, because I have to have the group added to my account or to the group manager, and we call it DevOps. So let's call it get DevOps here. Okay, so now we've added DevOps to our group, to our host, and once again we need to create this account. We do sudo. So we won't go ahead now and get a reference to the host group and then say sudo become equals true, because if we want to make another task object, which we can then also show you how we can iterate over the tasks and just kind of modify all of them at once. Okay, so let's go and to our host group, to our host, let's add some SSH config, and I'm just going to add some default SSH config, and go SSH equals. Okay, SSH, I can change things like, let's say I want to disallow password authentication, or I want to permit root. Obviously this can be dangerous in initial setup, because you could end up locking yourself out of the system if it doesn't configure properly. This is one of the things with these configuration tools. So I'm just going to leave it as true, just to sort of show you that it's changed, right? Okay, now once again, to change SSH, we have to sudo. So one way to do this is we can go tasks equals host dot get, not host, sorry, h dot get task objects. Okay, and then we can go tasks dot for each, and then we can go function task, and we can say task dot become equals true, and there we go. So now all of these tasks have been set to become. I want SSH dot become now. It should be, let's make it true. No, it should have actually come out in our task dot become equals true when you set that. Let's just see if we get a reference to a group. Has that worked? Group equals host dot get host group, and this one here is what did we call this? DevOps, right? So we can go g dot become, and that is set to true. So there's some bug in the SSH config which I'll need to fix up. Okay, so we have that done. Now we've got our users, we've got a group, we've got SSH setup. One thing we need to obviously configure is the remote access, how we're going to access the remote machines. So for now we need to set up our remote user, which is going to be Vincent. Oops, the user we want to connect as. And then we're also going to set what kind of authentication is it going to use, password or public key. Ideally we want to use public key, but for the first setup we have to use password authentication, so we can kind of commission these machines. So we set it to password, right? And if I went h.remote access, we can see my current settings here for the remote user access. We can also set things like what user you want to SU to, if in case it's not just root. Maybe we've got, as I say, a more complicated security setup and we want to sudo to like Postgres user or something like that. Okay. So we've got the basic setup. Now one thing we can do to sort of test it is try and connect to our remote machine. I want to see, did I get the IP address right? 187. Yep, here we go. So if I try and connect now, there's one problem. Obviously, we haven't set the password. So it's going to come back and tell us that we need to set the password because we're using password authentication. That's the sort of default setup for SSH on Ubuntu once it's installed. So we have to set the password. While we're managing passwords, we have to enter it all the time. Is you're going to enter it into like a password vault, and you can set the password per machine. Where is it? 187, right? And set the password. Or we can enter a default password that gets used if we can't find the passwords anywhere else, if it's a sort of same password you have across different machines. Okay, so now we can try h.getInfo, and then you'll see it'll come back. It's going to issue a generated Ansible query, and it's going to come back with the Ansible variables if it's successful. If not, it will tell us why, right? So tell us the results, because it's asynchronous, it's been sent off, got the results back. We can access them from the info variable and see it actually succeeded and at least logging in by SSH. What I'm going to do here at the bottom machine, I'm just going to go tail-f var log auth log, so we can kind of see what's happening. Now we can try and apply our config, right? So what it should do, it should create the DevOps group, it should add my public key to the Vincent user, and it should sort of change the SSH configuration setup. We can also do things, maybe before we do that, let's add some software installation. So we can go here, v.applicationmanagers. Let's take the system update, right? System update manager, and we want to add system update to our host. Okay, so now to get all these configs, you can normally go host.list configs, and we can see we've got two SSH and system update set up. So once again, to get reference to system update, I can get sysup equals h.get config and put in system update. Okay, then I can go sysup, and I can say sysup, I want you to update the cache equals true, and also I want sysup to become as well, because you're going to have to once again I could just do this in that for loop over the task objects and assign everything there. Okay, so we've got that. So what we should see is it'll do a system update, apply any changes to us, and come back with a result. So let's try and apply this and see if it comes back there. It's successfully submitted it. We can see at the bottom here it's kind of logging in, and it comes back and says there was an error, so we need to view the history. So we can get this from last results and see what happens. Okay, it tells us there's a module failure here for user account. Add user account. Let's see, ua.become says it's true, right? So to try and get more information, we can access our history. Well, we can access this last result. We also got a history as well, and we can say let's look at the entry. Now this part, entries will be different from tool to tool. This is like the raw output or return values from running our queries. The status and timestamp and errors are sort of three properties that we expect to have as part of our results entry that gets created once we use our tool to deploy the configuration changes. So I can go entry, and I can kind of see there's one failure, and I can go into plays, 0, get further information. Let's go into tasks. Okay, and now we can get into our, looks like it's a second task that failed, so we can go task 1 and see what it has there. Doesn't give us much more information. Oh, sudo a password is required. Okay, so I haven't applied my, I'm told it, I forgot one configuration, should be remote access, and I've got to tell it to use sudo authentication, right? Sudo authentication is true. Now I can run it again and see how far we get this time. Okay, it goes off, it's doing something, it's doing something, as you can see at the bottom here, right? So it might take a while. We can actually go ahead and do something else while we're waiting for the asynchronous results to come back. What we can do, for example, I can say, well, I want to create host 2, which is going to be similar to host 1, and I'm just going to say copy 2, and I'm going to say 192.168. What is this address? 122.192. Okay, so now I go to a host 2, which has got the same sort of setups. So I go host.user accounts. They set up host. Host 2.user accounts, host 2.account groups. Host groups. Similar thing all set up, right? You can also see in the meantime our other results came back, so I can get last results and see what happened. And it says, hey, everything was great, right? So it configured everything. We can go here and have a look. We can go less home Vincent.ssh authorized keys, and we can see it's been copied over there. We can go to etc ssh d_config, and we can have a look and see if our changes are allowed, like permit _root. Sorry, permit root. No, permit root. There we go. And as we can see, permit root login is set to yes, right? And if we look on this unconfigured one, yeah, etc ssh d config and permit root. You can see its default is prohibit password, right? So it only allows public keys. So it's applied our changes. We can also have a look at etc groups, and we should see our DevOps group has been created for us as well. Okay, so that's pretty cool. What we can also, so we created the second one, so now we can apply it as well. You'll notice because we haven't set a password for H2, right? It will complain unless you have a default password. So if I went ahead now and said h.h2 let me just quickly maybe go here and start the var log auth log so we can see what's happening. If I go to H2 and I go apply config, it's going to say, hey, there's no password. So I can set a password. What I can always do as well, I can go v.session.has password if I want to check, and I can specify what machine does it have a password defined, and it says false, right? Or I could just leave it blank, and that should give me the default password. Well, it won't give you the password, obviously. It'll just tell you if it's in the vault or not. So I can add it, or I could just use the default, right? So let me set the default password. Now if I go apply config, it'll go off, and as we can see, it's connecting here and doing what it needs to do. Once again, the results will come back. Now obviously every time we come into Vincent, we don't have to save, run all these commands, so we can save the configurations. And there's two things. We can go v.save all, and that will save the users, the groups, and the hosts, or we can just save a particular host. So let's just go save all, and that will save it. So next time we start up, we can just go v.load all, and we'll load it up so we can just run it or change what we currently have. We don't have to mess around with it. Other things that are pretty cool, right, is we can do things like get the history. So I can say, well, get history. I want to see, we've got 3 entries now because we ran the command against it 3 times. This is saved to, we applied the config 3 times. This is twice, sorry. This is saved as well when the host is persisted. So, and I can get the different entries, right? So I can go list, let's get history. Hist equals h.get history. h.list, not h, hist.list entries, and I can see more information. I can see this one failed, at what time and date it failed, etc. And I can obviously go in each one of these are the history entry objects, and I can query it. So I can also iterate over it using normal JavaScript, and extract historical information from here. Okay, well that's it for the brief demo of Vincent. I hope you guys like it. If you've got any feedback or any useful tips or ideas, let us know. We're still working on it. We've got a couple of objectives we want to finish for use in our office, and once that's done, then we can start adding other functionality as well. Thanks. Bye.